I'm here to remind everyone, I say at the General Assembly, of the role that science plays in informing and shaping policy. There is probably not a single area of policy that does not need to be informed by evidence, by data, and by science itself. And this is also particularly true for the microbial sciences. Microbes touch everything, and microbes know no borders. And while that can create havoc, we're all seeing it these days, don't we? It is also true that the extraordinary majority of microbes are actually beneficial and are actually essential for life. Actually, it's estimated, it's a difficult number to estimate, but it's estimated that way less than 1% of the microbes are actually pathogenics. All the others are either beneficial or neutral. So understanding the world of microbes is an absolute imperative, either to curb dangerous effects or to harness their power for healthier life, for sustainable energy sources, for biodiversity, for tackling climate change, for solving hunger problem, and so on. All these goals are actually captured by the SDGs, and microbes are essential for all of these. ASM will have a whole session at this event on this topic with great leaders, so tune in on the 27th on this. So starting from the role of microbes in the world and in science, I would like to focus my remarks today on understanding what are we learning today from the pandemic. And I would like to launch a strong appeal for global leadership by international organisms like the United Nations General Assembly, other United Nations institutions, and also by the member sovereign states. I'd like to go back to 1989. 1989 is the date of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that is essentially the date that we use as the start of the globalization by approximation. But certainly what we saw at that time, the growth of a globalized and interconnected world, which could have been a terrific opportunity for addressing some of the most global daunting problems for humanity: crisis management, hunger, extreme poverties, climate change, and so on and so forth. All these concepts are very well captured by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and we sincerely applaud these goals, and we want to work very hard toward the success. But what I want to say is that with the fall of the ideology-trapped blocs in 1989, the vision was for a more democratic, more transparent, and more equitable coordination and cooperation across sovereign nations. But then came 2020, and the pandemic showed us how difficult it actually is to govern a deeply interconnected and global world, even in the midst of a global crisis, which, if you think about it, it's actually a relatively easy crisis, so to speak, because we have to find, no matter where we are, just one common enemy, SARS-CoV-2, a very small virus that should unite us all against this and coordinate. So I think it is very unfortunate, to say the least, that we are seeing a widespread dominant nationalistic approach to management of the pandemic and to the vaccinations program, for example, given that the science at the basis of solving these problems are in and of itself totally global. In fact, the development of the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine has been a terrific, phenomenal success for research and development of governments, of the private sectors, and all together. However, now it really feels a little bit that we're playing a global game of football without a coach, and also with no quarterback. And each player does what he or she thinks is better for him, blatantly failing to execute a global strategy or tactic. And I think that not only this is very important matter for inclusion and equity, as we just heard before, ensuring that everyone benefits for science. That Dr. McNutt said, ensuring that science is not a zero-sum game. So we need to harness that power to the benefit of everyone. But if we don't have a global strategy, we will leave people behind. We will not harness the power of science to make it a non-zero sum game. So this strategy is really, really important. And I think that the nature of a pandemic in itself, it is a tautology, the fact that the pandemic needs a global approach. So how can we envision curbing a dangerous variance breeding when we have billions of people not in sight of a vaccine, even if we administer third doses to a few fortunate 100 millions of those? The more the virus circulates in communities around the world, wherever that happens to be, the more the virus will mutate. That's what viruses do. And we can expect variants which could be much worse than the Delta variant. The IMF estimated that an investment in $50 billion in a global vaccination campaign would generate a 9 trillion additional benefit in global outputs by 2025. So why is it that in 2008, we could find cash to prop up the financial system at a global economic crisis, but we cannot act to support a global program for vaccinations today in 2020 to fight one common enemy, SARS-CoV-2? A pandemic was predicted by experts, and this one may not even be a one-off. There could be other pandemics even after SARS-CoV-2. How are we going to prepare ourselves for other microbiological threats, such as the antibiotic resistance of microorganisms? The General Assembly a few years ago dedicated a high-level session to this topic. The problem has not gone away, and the superbug could actually come back and haunt us in another pandemic. So we have seen that microbes can create havoc at a global level in many ways that perhaps was unimaginable to many. We have also seen what the power of science can deploy, how we can conquer that. What we need is now to ensure robust international collaboration and frameworks for action and implementation. Leaving the second part, as others have mentioned, the implementation part and the frameworks for collaboration and the incentives for getting this done only at a national level to solve global problems seems to me like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Unless we build those frameworks, we will not be able to be efficient. So let's take, for example, the investments that currently in the United States, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention is making in sequencing variants for SARS-CoV-2 and more, and harnessing the power of next generation sequences. These technology can inform on identifying various viral strains that can be invaluable information for surveillance, for research, and for patient treatment. We're very excited and very supported by such investment that will transform the clinical and public health microbiology labs. However, if these technologies and the sequencing infrastructure is enacted only at a national level, even a big country like the United States, it will not work. For the future, my ask is that it is essential to deploy a global sequencing network, because we do not know where the next variants, where the next microbes will come from. We need a global surveillance and diagnostic infrastructure. This is my ask. And I also refer to a great editorial written by Nobel laureate Harold Varmus, recently, last week, I think, published in the Financial Times. I know this is hard, yes, but this has happened before. For example, the PEPFAR program has really helped develop infrastructure for HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa and creating great lab capacity and infrastructure. And we can do this again if we have global leadership where sovereign states can step up and we have international collaboration and cooperation in achieving this. So under this note, let's keep that spirit up. Let's keep the spirit of global science, which is global in its nature, not only at the curiosity of asking questions and answering them, but let's also harness the leadership to deploy that science, to deploy innovation, to implement and harness the ingenuity that can benefit the whole world. This is a globalization that is really worth fighting for. And this is what we need to ask our global leaders to sustain. Thank you for your attention.